I'm Luke Summerhays, and I love Venipede. The Mukade, the Japanese name for the venomous breeds of centipede found throughout the country, is a fairly common menace, particularly in rural areas or on farms. When I was staying on a farmstead in Gunma Prefecture, we were once saved by the house cat sniffing a Mukade out. And another time, one had wiggled its way into the school where I worked, so dustpans and brushes were dispatched to remove it. As a genuine threat that people deal with in their day-to-day lives, it's no surprise that these small critters inspired a larger cousin in mythology. The Omukade, literally just Great Centipede, is depicted at a kaiju scale in old Japanese paintings, curling itself around mountains. We actually talked about this yokai during the episode about Centiskorch, but it's fair to say it influenced this earlier centipede as well. Venipede is a poison and bug Pokemon, with the front and back antennae and segmented body of a centipede, but relatively few segments and legs compared to the famous long and wiggly real-world bug. Of course, Venipede's size and proportions are much larger than any living arthropod of the modern day. Like a real centipede, Venipede is a venomous carnivore. Pokemon Shield tells us, "Its fangs are highly venomous. If this Pokemon finds prey it thinks it can eat, it leaps for them without any thought of how things might turn out." And Pokemon Black says, "Its bite injects a potent poison, enough to paralyze large bird Pokemon that try to prey on it." Also like a real-life centipede, it uses both its front and back antennae to sense the world. Pokemon White tells us, "It discovers what is going on around it by using the feelers on its head and tail. It is brutally aggressive." And one Pokédex entry even acknowledges the link to the later Pokemon. Pokemon Sword tells us, "Venipede and Sizzlipede are similar species, but when the two meet, a huge fight ensues." The name Venipede is a simple combination of venom and centipede. The Japanese name is Fushide, with fushi meaning segment, and the de coming from Mukade. The actual name centipede comes from the Latin meaning 100 legs. This makes them seem lesser than the similar related animal, the millipede, whose name means 1,000 legs. If it were a simple upgrade to more legs, it would make sense when, at level 22, Venipede evolved into Whirlipede. This Pokemon is wheel-shaped, a curled pillbug-like creature with aerodynamic feelers and a scowling eye on either side. This of course brings to mind the woodlouse, or pillbug as it's called in America. But in reality there are actually some species of millipede which roll up for protection in the same way, so it's not a complete left turn. The name Whirlipede combines millipede with whirl, referring to the spinning motion. And the Japanese name is Wiga, a combination of the English word wheel with the Japanese for sphere, iga. Pokemon Black tells us, "Protected by a hard shell, it spins its body like a wheel and crashes furiously into its enemies." Interestingly, millipedes are actually herbivorous, so although they can grow much longer than centipedes, they aren't dangerous. Pokemon Shield tells us, "Whirlipede protects itself with a sturdy shell and poisonous spikes, while it stores up the energy it'll need for evolution." Although this Pokemon is far more mobile than many equivalent, several Pokédex entries talk in this way about preparing for evolution, making comparisons to chrysalis monsters like Kakuna and Metapod. Pokemon White tells us, "It is usually motionless, but when attacked, it rotates at high speed and then crashes into its opponent." It doesn't have to store energy for too long though, as at level 30 it can evolve into Scolipede. Scolipede is much more similar to Venipede than Whirlipede, though it is now rearing up into a centaur-like configuration, similar to a real centipede right before it pounces on prey. It's probably no accident that this Pokemon resembles a centaur. The Japanese word for millipede, yasude, contains the kanji for horse. And also I guess the English name centipede is kind of close to centaur, so the pun almost works in English too. Pokemon Black tells us, with quick movements, it chases down its foes, attacking relentlessly with its horns until it prevails. And Pokemon White tells us, highly aggressive, it uses the claws near its neck to dig into its opponents and poison them. These descriptions make Scolipede sound terrifying, and at 2.5 meters in length, it would be a pretty scary monster to meet. Competitively, it's never been the most dangerous monster, but it did have a little niche on the 3DS generations. And it's scary enough in one-on-one fights. Welcome back to Moils on Mon, Venipede.
Finally, a cool bug.
It is a pretty cool bug.
It is a cool bug, though. There have been cool bugs in the past, but I like this bug. I think having, a big scary bug, like they've had them in the past, Pinsir, Cypher, what have you there. Scolipede is, if you were in the Pokemon world and you were like going for a cave and this guy turned around the corner, you would run a mile. You would run a mile from Scolipede. That's a scary bug. I also like Whirlipede. It's just like a ball with some horns. That's a plus. Always about that. And yeah, I never used one, but I did consider it because it's a cool bug.
Okay, fair enough. The name Scolipede and the Japanese name Pendraw both seem to make reference to the real species, the Scolopendra. This group of centipedes are spread all over the world and make fierce predators, so they're a good basis for a scary monster. The fantastical Omukade is a terrifying concept, and it is made for 2 fearsome Pokemon. If we were to travel back hundreds of millions of years, we would actually see 2-meter-long centipedes crawling around the real world. Fortunately, the Earth is no longer oxygenated enough for those size of bugs to exist. Music for Luke Loves Pokemon is composed by Jonathan Cromie. Artwork for the show is by Katie Groves. Venipede and Family were designed by Tomohiro Kitakaze. Writing, producing and editing is by me, Luke Summerhays, while funding is provided by lovely listeners at patreon.com/podcastiopodcastius. Next up are Cottony and Petilil, so if you have thoughts about those or any other monsters, hit me up with a DM or an email to lukelovespkmn@gmail.com. If you like this podcast, please rate and review wherever you're listening, or tell a friend. If you want to hear more Pokemon chatter from me, come by twitch.tv/lukelovespkmn, most Saturday nights from 9 PM UK time. And even if you don't feel like doing any of that, thank you so much just for listening. I love Venipede. And remember, I love you too.